And we have with us tonight, Salty Toes is here for one. And we have Jim, Mike Silver, and Low Tide, and myself, Rjax. And we're hoping to have Mason real soon. But why don't we start with Jim and see if you have any news that you want to kind of go over with us?
Yeah, I have a little bit. I posted a writing called "So You Live in the Land of the Free." Please download it, read it, contemplate it. Contemplate it with the lint in your belly button. And I also posted treasurydirect.gov savings bond. This is where you can go to check the bond values backing your driver's license, as well as your birth certificate. Now, up in the stream of the page, there are a one-page document called the one-pager and the two witness testimonies, and that ties into the AmericanStateNationals.org and the American States TASA. So the .org is the 50 states contact page for your state's assembly. The AmericanNationals.org TASA site is an information learning site. Feel free to go in, read, and learn. And then please share it with anybody who's interested.
And is that in the Constitution, the room that we're having the call?
It's in the general page.
Under general, okay. Great. Anything else you have tonight?
In the news?
Well, whatever. If you've got anything that you want to share, go right ahead.
Okay, the 72 nations from BRICS meeting in Iceland. There's supposed to be a distribution of seized wealth from the banking realm and other corporate players. Can you imagine what $600 trillion looks like? Give you an idea. In your own little realm, if you were doled out $1 trillion just for you, you could effectively spend $1 million for over 2,100 years before you run out.
My goodness.
Just for little old you. That's how much corruption and greed has gone on around our backs for so long. These 72 entities are corporate governmental entities that would sit around the United Nations table. The land jurisdiction has another meeting in January. It's going to be very interesting to see what pans out of it. And in some of the snippets, you're seeing some reference to $21 trillion. Well, that supposedly came out of HSBC Bank in December of 2016. So why is it just now making the news? I think there's a certain level of accountability to be had on that. That's all I got to share.
Well, you said it's just now making the news. What news is it making? Where did you get that information?
I'll have to go back into one of my threads, and I would have to cross post and forward.
Okay, but I mean, was it in like a mainstream media type place?
Mainstream media right now is so full of themselves trying to put down Trump derangement syndrome, and they know what is about to transpire and happen, supposedly. And so when I look at the mainstream news and that, well, so-and-so, Mr. Getz got nominated and then stepped down, I see this as a exposure tactic. Everyone's getting smeared. This is what they do. See? And then they move people over into their originally intended slot or open that door and put them into it. So when you look at the fake media, you can see who is the mouthpiece and tool of the corporate global government elite.
Absolutely. You know, I feel like that'll be the first place that if I see them actually reporting any news whatsoever besides their own opinions and their own propaganda, I will think that something has really changed. If I ever see them, reporting anything that's true.
Well, the greatest part of deception is to take some of the truth and sprinkle a little bit of deceit in it and then cast it out in the field.
Yeah, well, like I said, if they ever report anything that sounds anything that's not like propaganda, I will be very surprised. I mean, I will know that something has definitely changed if they report anything besides propaganda.
Right.
I mean, that will be to me a big turning point. Because that also tells me that the world is going to know what's going on at that point.
I think pretty much most of the world has turned their back on mainstream media. When you look at newspaper distribution subscriptions from, say, early 2019 to what's going on today, and the TV viewership following, there's been a big shift. Fortunately.
Unfortunately, my family hasn't switched from that yet. So they still believe every word that mainstream media says and every word that the government says. So,
well, all of us have some family that's like that. I myself have had someone tell me very bluntly, keep your political viewpoints and your opinions to yourself. We're doing quite well, thank you.
yeah. I guess all of us have a little bit of that coming to us every once in a while.
Oh, yeah.
So, Silver, can you give some tips on navigating that bond site, the Treasury Direct, because it only lists basically double E and the different series bonds. Do you type in driver's license bond or birth certificate bond?
Your driver's license number is a registration event. Treat it just like the number on an E or double E savings bond. And see what happens. You should see a table drop down. It says tens, hundreds, and thousands and 10,000s. And you're going to have to pull the values of each of those over and then do a tally. When I did it to my driver's license, it was a little over $80,000.
Wow.
Wow.
I'm 67. And at one time, I had a Class A CDL which means I could run 60 foot of semi truck. And every time you put a endorsement on your driver's license, whether it's motorcycle, taxi cab, box truck delivery, Class A, CDL, hazmat, whatever, those bonds add value.
Well, what would a person do with them if they found out the value? I mean, they're just a number, right?
It's not just a number. So when I first got the ticket in 2021, it was for well over $2,000 for one event with 4 charges on it. I took my driver's license, went into that Treasury Direct, got the value, and waited 3 weeks after everything was processed, and then went back in. The courts tapped the driver's license for about $23,000.
Oh my God.
So how the courts function, the moment you get a traffic ticket, the traffic ticket was generated a bond. The bond was instantaneously put up on the court registry investment system. The prosecutor has a case bond, a penal bond, and a performance bond. Once you learn how the system functions, then you can go in and do counterpoint. You have to be willing to bear the effort to own the information, to own the knowledge in your heart and in your mind. Because the courtroom is actually a theater, and you're a participant in live theater. And they're attempting to scam you into voluntary compliance. And if you show up with your own bond, the prosecutor has to cover those 3 bonds. Now, they like to have you show up with their bond, say a $5,000 bond in their system. Well, the American Federation of States has countered the court system with a $15 trillion bond, and it's lodged in the Treasury. And every state of the union has a sub-account underneath it, under that coverage of 15 trillion. Now, the entire corporate de facto governmental system for the last 160 years has been a fraud against the American people. And people need to recognize the distinction between the Civil War timeline and everything that happened before it. Every state corporate entity that you think of as government is nothing more than a foreign-owned donut stand providing governmental services under foreign jurisdiction. And they've managed to lull the people into a state of trust and con you into participating inside the corporate fiasco. They did it with your birth certificate, your driver's license, and your voluntary compliance. Most folks don't recognize that they don't live under the Declaration of Independence, yet they go out and celebrate it every July. Yes, vast majority of people have been removed from having the Declaration of Independence apply to them.
Well, that's interesting. And that's it's called the treasurydirect.gov website that you're
Yep.
talking about. Okay.
Yep.
I see that. I see that it's posted by Salty, and it's about 4 or 5 posts up in this room.
Okay.
Okay. All right. I see that Mason. Thank you so much, Jim, for all that information. That's fabulous to know.
Well, the
And I
more people are able to validate, the more they're able to challenge the status quo.
absolutely.
So let's hand it over to Mason.
Yeah, I was going to say hi, Mason. So glad to see you here, and we want to give you the floor at this point if you're ready to take it.
I have no problem. I'm kind of sitting here looking at a horse's backside, waiting for the shot, but he can hang on. Um, I think the topic that I was going to bring up tonight had to do with the mortgaging system. And I guess one of the first things I'd want to bring to everybody is that, most of the activities that the system has been involved in has been criminal. And you
Yeah,
can go down through the different criminal statutes and look up extortion and theft and undue influence, coercion. There's a whole list of things that your sheriff would be one of the lead guys to be arresting people on these particular charges. The problem is most people don't go through a simple process to discover what some of these things could entail. And one of the most valuable of all of them has to do with your domicile, the place that you live. So I don't care if you're renting, which is another matter, or if you're actually in the process of buying something, or if you think you bought it and you lost it, or you're in the process of paying for it and you still are having to make those payments because you don't know any other way to do it. There are some evidences that been posted for this evening's chat that have to do with uh, demands for production of evidence to establish a particular entity's right, claim, ownership, and possession of something that they don't have, and that you've been led to believe you've been given something that you haven't paid for yet. And both of these issues come together when you discover that the instrument you used to buy the property with was a promissory note paid to the order of the lender. And there's in the documents that just got posted today, I've been looking for them for about a week, and I finally realized where they were on my computer. Um, there's 2 notes in there, and one of them is from a certified copy from another court in another state, and the other one is from the certified. It's a copy certified by the lender in the state where my property was located. And very simply, when you look at these 2 instruments, you'll see that first of all, it starts to pay to the order of. That's the stamp, and it's always on the signature page where the individual who signed it promised to pay. That's where their name is signatured or signed. And once the lender, by his rep, receives the document, the promissory note, the mortgage, they go and they deposit that in a demand deposit account. And then, if you can get a copy of that after the fact. You'll see right there on the note it says paid to the order of the lender, and it's usually signed by the CFO, the Chief Financial Officer. And if you'll see that there's some very interesting case law on that same web page dealing with Congress's authority to be able to mortgage everybody's property for the creation of paper money. And it's all backed by a lien, a mortgage on all our property. That's how their Federal Reserve notes are actually authorized. So the simpleness of it is you go in and you ask or you demand, however you want to word this, your lender, whoever claims they're the holder of it, to, and if you can get the court, which I had them at one point, I had the judge, he was going to make the lender bring the actual original note into the courtroom. And of course, I already knew that the person who was claiming they had the right to receive the money, I knew they didn't have it because they'd already sold it. But they claimed they had the right. And so I got the judge, read a mandate to compel the lender to bring in the original note. And he was almost convinced. The day of the hearing, the attorney appeared by phone and said, okay, what's going on? And he says, well, he said, that instrument is it's too valuable to be carrying around in a briefcase. You know, it's like, what do you got, gold in your pocket or something? Well, it's their gold. And so he conned the judge into sending in, not even bringing, sending in a certified copy of the original. So I got that certified copy, and it's in that folder on this link. It obviously it says just exactly what it says. It's paid to the order of the lender. Now that's not the only evidence that's pertinent here. There's two notes there, and they both say basically the same thing. But there's also a case in there, Jerome Daly versus Bank of Montgomery, or Bank of Montgomery versus Jerome Daly. And the case is still on the books. It's never been removed. And the court, in the short of it, declared his mortgage to be void. Why? Because the CFO admitted that the note paid for the house. It was the note that was deposited. They turned that into their own money on their own accounts. So this whole thing boils down to some real simple steps when it comes to who did what and whether it was lawful or criminal. And the sheriff, who may or may not be aware of any of this stuff I'm telling you about, you may be looking at some kind of a form, a claim on the sheriff once you've made the demand for the lender, whoever it might be, to produce at least a certified copy of the original, which will show the pay to the order of stamp on it. Well, the fact that they convinced you to make payments after the fact, that's fraud. And they call that double dipping, if you will. So whether you paid for your house or not, this is still a simple step to expose the truth, the nature of the note, how it was paid, who paid for it, and who is holding the title, which none of those people are. And if you're the possessor of your house, your property, you have, according to the law, 9/10 of the law, 9/10 of the title is the possession of it. Now, whether you're an individual who actually has the qualified right to the allodium part, that's between you and the system and how you recognize yourself in it. But only the sovereignty can hold the complete title, the allodium. And there's several Supreme Court cases that, in effect, make these comments about uh, title isn't necessarily complete just by possession. And it's also not necessarily complete just by title. So when these two things come together, you know what the title is supposed to be. In most people's heads, it's a land patent. There's another format that covers the title to land in this nation, in this country, in all these states. And because the land belongs to the sovereignty, which is in the people and citizens of the state, it's an equal right of everyone in their individual capacity to claim ultimately a portion of this country to be able to survive and to live and to be able to maintain a relationship with their fellow citizens. So this extra little piece of work that you might consider is called an active state, and I think I explained this to you guys once before. This has to do with a contract in effect between two sovereigns. And there's a U.S. Supreme Court case on the subject that an act of state cannot be heard. No issue of this act of state can be heard by any court. Why? Because it's between the sovereigns. There's no court that rises above the activities of two sovereigns acting in a contractual agreement. And in this country, all the land is allodium to the sovereignty. Sovereignty is in the people. People are citizens of the state. And the contract clause that you may be curious about, go look at Article 1, Section 10, Clause 1. It's the same place where the gold and silver clause has never been changed, where there's one thing that the state cannot mess with. It cannot mess with private contracts. Period. It's got no jurisdiction. And there's a lot of case law on these little topics that I'm giving you. And if you have trouble with that, just remember there's a principle behind it as well. The gold, the land, the minerals, the water, it all belongs to who? In England, it all belongs to the king. In America, it all belongs to the people as citizens of the state. So what's happening right now, and it's going to continue to escalate, is your rights to travel, your right to exempt plates, your rights to your allodium title, all these little pieces, and your right to proper identification it's all critical in the moving forward for those who are going to leave the consciousness of this 3D world where everybody has to be licensed, regulated, and controlled in everything they do for the sake of the whole who? The whole demonic democracy that has been controlling this country from its beginning. It's just now that it's escalated to the point where it's time for the people who are ready to wake up to take charge of their own personal lives and become involved responsibly. And this growth process we're dealing with right now has nothing to do with money. Money can be your worst enemy. And if you're relying on the money to get you out of your problem, you're relying on the wrong thing. Because it's the exercise of facing the things you greatly fear that builds the strength to make that spiritual step. So outside of that, I don't know what else I can bring to you guys. All the evidence is in there. It's more now an exercise for each of you to sit down and write out a little complaint. Send it off, make it a demand or whatever to your lender, your mortgage, whoever claims they're holding your note, and demand that they produce the evidence. And by the way, there's case law on the possessor too. And there's case law on a promissory note. That's I know that case is in there as well. Anyway, the Supreme Court has ruled on promissory notes in this country. It's not allowed. So there's a little act of Congress where Congress decided to mortgage everybody under a promissory note, and it's listed right in the list of things that they use. Not only is it unconstitutional, it's actually an act of treason against the sovereignty of this nation, including a lot of other things that they're doing. And everything that you have to deal with that inhibits your life, your liberty, or your private property is an act of treason against the sovereignty by these foreign entities. And I'll give you another one. There's a whole lot of scams going on right now of so-called entity agents who are trying to scam people to get them to pay taxes, get them to pay something. It's amazing what's going on. They even got this QFS scam going on. They want you to pay them to give you money. It's amazing. Well, a very close friend of mine, he got a really horrible letter from the IRS. And I've told people before, and not too far in the rears of this particular call, people who are complaining about having communications and stuff with the IRS. And the first thing I usually tell them is did you make an appointment to go see the agent? And I always get this, and well, what are you afraid of? And why don't you take an 8233 form with you when you go? You can also ask for them to get a copy of your master account. And all these things have all been done many, many times before now. But the point is that how many people are willing and able to call the IRS and set up an appointment, especially now, because these agencies are no longer functioning. And it's kind of amazing how people are getting caught up in some of these scams, and then they complain, oh, I had to pay this or I had to pay that. I say, how do you know? Did you actually pay the U.S. Treasury? Or did you send your money to some who knows what? And I know there's a bunch out there too. Well, this thing happened. A very close friend, he got a bill from the IRS for 60 grand with a notice in demand. He's going to pay within 10 days, or they're going to come out and take his house and everything on the property. And it's like, oh wow, and it's a pretty serious letter. Well, he took that letter, called the Treasury Department, gave him the number, there was no name on it, just the U.S. IRS. He also, well, he didn't call the sheriff yet, but he was going to. So it's like, if you get stuff like this, especially now, and you're afraid to address it or deal with it, well, you're already on the backside. You're not going anywhere. And there's just so many little things that you could do right now that seem to be, oh my God, moments you might be afraid to do. You don't, oh, I can't go see my sheriff. I can't complain about my mortgage or anything. Oh, I can't tell him that the tax they're collecting is constitutionally void based on your research on taxes on allodium titles. There is none. The only tax that can be levied is on the deed. And that's the taxable instrument. And the statutes all identify it just that way. So, got to wake up. If you're going to do something, now's the time. I don't know how long this grace period is going to last. I've made this comment before, but if you're only about the money and do just what you can do to get money, then I guess that's just where it's at. And you've got nothing to complain about except your own unwillingness to do the things that might seem to be fearful, and be willing to walk into that. Because you're going to find there's a whole other world on the side of afraid. But you're not going to see it until you do it. I yield.
Yeah. So, along the line of what Mason was talking about, under American law, you're obligated to fight crime. You're obligated by law to report it when you see it. Now, can you recognize when a crime has been committed against you? How about fraud, misrepresentation, personage, barratry, unlawful conversion from the land of the living to the land of the dead or the book of the dead?
Treason.
Now,
Don't forget genocide.
yep, genocide on paper. And so when it comes down to going and making an appointment with one of these characters, here in Washington, one of our members tried to have an educational moment with one of these cretins. And because they had their head stuffed so far up into the dark, past their ears, they ended up having to formally go after this character and lien them. Everything they have in their name has been seized under lien under the Uniform Commercial Code. And now this particular agent is looking over his back going, what hell happened? So that individual master file that Mason referenced is to an entity called a Puerto Rican Transmitting Utility. And on paper, behind your back, there's a style of your name that is a Puerto Rican. I possess my IMF file, my individual master file. And once you get the general gist of the game that's afoot, and you learn to ask questions. Really? Well, where's my office? How many employees do I have? Where's my bank account? And you start asking questions for the demand of answers, suddenly they're not able to produce. And when you put them on notice that the jig is up, next thing you know, the rats go scurrying off into the dark and will leave you alone. There are better and easier pickings over there. Leave this one alone. This is not the droids you've been looking for. I yield.
Okay, I have a few questions. This is Arjax. I just got in the mail um, a renewal for my driver's license. And since I would like to become a citizen of my state, what should I do? How should I tackle that and not get my driver's license again and still have an ID and all of that?
May I?
Yeah, go ahead. Whichever.
Okay, so on your ID and your driver's license, currently that is being addressed by the Federation of States, kicking various states in the backside.
Hey, are they doing that to Virginia?
I know for a fact that they're doing it to Missouri. And
well, I'm in Virginia. Darn it.
Okay, so the states, as you know them right now, are nothing more than business entities. Think of them as like a giant McDonald's franchise network. You have the headquarters in D.C., then you have the state of Virginia as a subsidiary franchise. Okay? Now, your driver's license is a sub-franchise underneath it. And what is its purpose? To allow you to drive. Driving is a commercial term, meaning you're accessing the roads for profit. And commercial activity is regulated. Now, on the flip side of the same coin, you have an unrestricted right to travel and use the road for your own convenience, to move about your property as long as you're not making it a for profit affair. The entire system works on admissions and confessions of the vocabulary that comes out of your mouth. The entire public education system. And I poke fun at it because it squarely puts you down the cattle chute of slavery. But it's the words that you use, whether or not you can exercise your inherent right of sovereignty, or if you acquiesce into the category of a subject. One cannot be the sovereign of a country, known as America, and yet be a subject to a foreign power. So unless you're engaged in a taxi cab affair, or you have a shingle on the side of your car that says RJ's Floral Delivery Service, or something like that, and you're not operating a taxi cab or for profit as an Uber or Lyft driver, you're not running a 26-foot box delivery truck, and you're certainly not operating a 60-foot semi-truck, then why do you need a driver's license? When all of this affair came in vogue in the early 1920s, it was brought out to the states as a safety item for registration. That way, if your car got stolen, or in those days, your horseless carriage, were stolen, they would know where to return it to. Well, it was just one excuse after another for the expansion of control, power, and money. So I do travel. Now, the various states were told that if they don't make the remedy available to the American people, their entire operation, known as the state of whatever it is, state of Kansas, state of Missouri, Virginia, state of Michigan, you're as illegal and unlawful and criminal as hell. They were threatened with their service contract. You're in violation of your original service contract with that corporation that Abraham Lincoln brought in. That corporation was known as the United States of America, Inc., incorporated out of Edinburgh, Scotland, and we have all of the evidentiary documents to prove that the English subverted the original Constitution by way of corporate contract. This entire thing was to get you, your ancestors, to surreptitiously volunteer to be Brits. Because this foreign corporation was under the Commonwealth system, you had to admit to being a fellow Commonwealth citizen to actually vote in this corporate affair. It's actually illegal and unlawful for an American to vote in a foreign election. What sense would it make for you to vote in the elections of France, for Pete's sake? Same thing goes for this. However, they ever so conveniently left incorporated off of all of these entities. Semantic deceit. This is why I've encouraged everybody to get a backbone, go down to your local county, and ask them for their county charter. Oh, and while I'm here, I want a copy of the municipal charter as well. Because that original corporation was put into bankruptcy in the early 1900s, 1906, 1907. And so all of the corporate counties in existence at that time went bankrupt. This country and its service providers have been operating in open, naked bankruptcy in every level since 1933. Now, Mason made reference to the promissory note. A promissory note is recognized as a form of currency. And every last one of you have been privately deemed to be a private banker and a professional in private banking. You use a checkbook. You have an ATM card. You utilize these private Federal Reserve services utilizing privately issued military script. So under the original Coinage Act, unless you've got silver and gold coin in hand, immediately on challenge, their system deems you to be a dependent pauper.
Vagrant.
Are you? And vagrant. This is why the Federation of States on April 5th did an international proclamation of an American issued replacement gold system. known as the American Federation dollar. It's based on 1/10 of 1 ounce, and it floats with the daily market value of gold. So at $2,000 an ounce, 1/10 is $200. At $2,700, it's 270 Federal Reserve notes. There will be a day when the Federal Reserve note will be called off the market. Question is, who or what is going to parade whatever attempted replacement in front of your nose, and will you accept it? Right now, the Bar Association, and I'm going to make an explicit, the American Bar. There's also the U.S. Bar. There's the International Bar, and the educational institutions known as the American Inns of Court. And they're all present in America. And every last one of them is a communist-supported entity. And they're looking to take away your independence, your sovereignty, your freedom. And all these attorneys are actually foreign agents of England. If you look up the Edwardian title of nobility scale, king, queen, prince, duke, earl, baron, royal knight, the next step down is esquire. In England, they're also known as barristers. So Mason alluded to the kind of title you have. As a U.S. citizen, you're subject to primogeniture, the oath and fealty to the king, and the entailments are exercised by the state corporate entity holding control of your life's energy under your birth certificate in a Sedicay trust in a usufructuary relationship. So you think you live in the land of the free? Well, you might be a resident in the land of the free. And as a resident, you're under the entailment franchise. Yes, you've been entrapped. But you have a green light to exit. And like the Wizard of Oz says, Dorothy, you've always had the power to go home. Click your heels. It's that easy. Just click your heels. So there's no reason to be fearful of any of your hired public servants. They don't know what they don't know because they've been misinformed on purpose. And it is your responsibility to be self-aware, self-governing, and self-responsible. Because if you won't govern yourself, someone else will surely step in and do it for you. but it's going to cost you. I yield.
So, step by step, what should I do? Go to the DMV first and do what?
Okay, first of all, you need to reclaim yourself.
Okay,
I reposted the one.
Before I go to the DMV, I need to reclaim myself?
Yep. So there's a one-page document I reposted, as well as the 2 witness testimonies. You also need a scanned copy of your birth certificate, and then you need to get a hold of the Virginia Assembly and make an appointment to do a recording. When you've done that, you can turn around and exercise full reversionary trust interest and take your estate out of control of the bankruptcy. You can also fill out a common carry declaration for the absolute claiming of the Second Amendment. And what part of the Second Amendment shall not be infringed upon? Because as a declared American, you are that foreign sovereign.
I'm a foreign sovereign. Now, how is that?
Okay, since you're in Virginia, you have Virginia. Walk out your front door and put your toes into the soil. Now you're standing on Virginia, literally. The first 6 inches is a certain jurisdiction. Under that 6 inches is another jurisdiction. One is soil, one is land. You need to wrap your head around that.
Okay, well, which one is which?
Well, when
The
you
soil
reclaim
is
your
the first 6.
yes,
The soil is the first 6, and then the next 6 is land.
yep.
Okay.
Now, on top of that, when you do this and it's recorded and published, you come out from underneath primogeniture and entailments, and you're owed the ability to get your land patent, like Mason was saying earlier. I posted 2 court cases, Wilcox versus Jackson and Lomax versus Pickering, and the case sightings there. So some of the earliest American court cases go back as early as the 1820s to reaffirm what Mason came forward with the 1828 dictionary. The problem is when they brought that corporation in the 1860s, they made all the states accept a corporate constitutional rewrite. So you have Virginia, you have the state of Virginia, which holds all of the state assets, the titles to parks, bridges, roads, anything you can think of within the physical border of Virginia. Then you have the state of Virginia, which is a foreign British territorial business entity. Then you have the Commonwealth of Virginia. And traditionally in the old realm, those were church lands held by the Vatican for the subsistence of widows, orphans, and indigent dependents of the church. So do you hold a Commonwealth title?
I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think so, because I don't know.
Well, that's where the language comes in. For the last going on 7 generations, our education system has dumbed us down, taken our vocabulary over, and spoon-fed everything between our ears. For me, I was sitting in the law archive one day, grasping certain concepts, and the light bulb went on. Click! And I sat up with a jerk. Oh my God, half of everything I know is wrong and the rest of it's built on a lie. So what do I really know that's for real? Well, I know how to tie my shoes. I know how to pull a zipper up. I use one end of a fork and it works really well that way. My entire world became challenged. How do I know this, that, or the other thing? By what authority? Is it real? And this is why we have this grace period going on. For those that are ready to awaken and take a step out of their diapers and get into their big girl and big boy pants, they can leave their diaper behind them. And they can start leaving the nanny state behind them to get them out of your life. However, are you brave enough and willing I yield?
Well, everything is really hard, even though you lay it out for us. It's still going to be hard. It's going to be real hard.
Actually, it's not that hard, folks. Every last one of us, and I'll raise my hand to it, at one time or another, need to recognize we have all been subjected to Stockholm Syndrome.
Amen to that.
We can't perceive our enemies because they have nice, white, pearly smiles. They wear a suit and tie. They have impeccably polished shoes. And from the late 40s into the 70s, what were we spoon-fed? Get a good education. Go to college. Make something of yourself. Like become a lawyer, a doctor, or a dentist. Folks, those in the past have all been Title 37 ununiformed military officers under the control of the British territorial English government contractor.
Do they know that?
No, well, some of them do, some of them don't. When you look in the past at every military officer who's ever gotten a knighting from the beloved Queen, they've been working as a recognized officer agent on behalf of the Crown. So really, who is the president?
Probably, they probably work for the Crown.
Well, I'm happy to say that as October 1, American land law was proclaimed. On October 5th, the sheriffs across the country were told to step into their lawful American peacekeeping roles. On the 8th, the military was converted from foreign service to American control and services. Some of you will learn that the East Coast strike, in part, was the conversion of foreign port control back to American port control.
So they're not going to go on strike again in January?
Well, one of the things that we've found out is every union has a branch office, or I will say the international head office in DC. And this is part of why Donald has said that it will be one of his goals to dissolve the National Education Association and return education to local state control. Our respective conversations have been to restore schools more local, and the money exists, by the way. This won't be a stretch. So much funding has been hidden behind the backs of mankind, it's staggering. When you see a number that's got 26 commas, just put a 1 and then a comma, 3 zeros, and write that number on a piece of paper with 26 commas in it.
I don't think I know what that number even, I couldn't pronounce it.
Well, neither can I. But that's just one account with a staggering amount of money in it. There were some old historic families in the 1500s that took the vast bulk of their wealth and put it in historic trusts. The international banking community has laid siege to those funds.
And how could they do that?
How about claims of abandonment of the rightful family trustees riding off into the sunset, never to be seen again? Oh, the American people, they walked off the American continent into the jurisdiction of the sea because they voluntarily enlisted in the Queen of England's Merchant Maritime Services.
Yeah, they became a citizen of Britain. Okay.
Well, this office of warrant officer in the merchant services is equivalent to the purser on a cruise ship. The cruise ship pulls into port, needs supplies, pays for port fees and taxes. And how do you do this function? You voluntarily pick up a 1040 form and say, here I am, acting as an agent, as an employee of this corporate entity, doing my duty under a U.S.-UK tax treaty. And not one nickel of those funds have ever paid for anything inside the borders of America.
So how are things paid for in America then, if the taxes are not used?
Okay. You need to recognize the style of name construct that comes in the mail. You have an upper lowercase name and you have an all case name that comes in on your bills. Those are not you, but your relationship role to them needs to be recognized. Okay?
Yeah.
And you need to learn to take control of these things. When you exercise your reversionary trust interest, you're stating, I'm no longer volunteering. I'm not donating one sweat droplet to the fraud. And you put the bankruptcy trustees on notice that you have exercised your reversionary trusteeship, you've canceled your donation, and you lay a claim to these names and all the different version of it. If you really look at your mail, you'll have first name, last name, first name, middle initial, last name, first name, middle initial, period, last name. If you get a traffic ticket, it's last name, comma, first name, last name. That's your proof of being seized upon in military form in this warrant officer capacity. And they're presenting you with a charge sheet. So imagine you just bellied up to the counter at the diner. Burger and fries, please. You just made the order. He who makes the order pays the bill. Since the court issued the order, they should be paying the bill out of that usufructuary trust. But do you know how? Right now in Washington, I have a gentleman who's gone through Stevens County Court. He's an inheritor to a patent, and he possesses in his possession the original issue instrument, and he's challenging the property tax because the county itself has issued forth fraudulent billing. They're in violation of 18 U.S.C. 1341, 1342, and 18 U.S.C. 241. Fraudulent names, violation of using the mail to commit personage, barratry, unlawful conversion, mail fraud. I helped him construct this $15 trillion bond. And then he had with it an AO 91 criminal complaint form for the Federation of States. It was blank. It was presented as, if you want to push this, I'm willing to file a criminal complaint against you. And when the assistant deputy prosecutor was going through his documents, he picked up this bond, flipped it over, and screamed bond to the judge. The judge sat upright like someone just poked a corn cob up her backside. And she said, well, we will let the value of the land be the value of the court case. Appeal granted. Click. All of that transpired in 25 seconds.
Mm.
Now, here in Washington, we have done a full deep dive in the corporation. And the Washington State Supreme Court is a nom de guerre to a non-registered entity. And we're calling the state Supreme Court of the state of Washington and the judiciary courts of the state of Washington, to which there are 139 of them, all into fraud.
How did you find out they weren't registered? Do you have to do a lot of research for that?
Yeah, some of us know how to do it, and some of us know where to go to extract the info. But some of us have shared that.
Are we all going to have to learn how to do that?
No. The info exists to the point that all you need is to grab the info, craft your responses accordingly, and fly like the wind.
So since y'all have already done it, you kind of have a template for everyone else to do it?
Yep. We have constructed a sheet that has all of the state UBI numbers on it. And a UBI is a universal business identifier. And you used to be able to go to an American website called the EIN utility. Go into it and look up corporate business entities. It would give you the entire tracking history of, let's say, Boeing or General Electric, who merged, who was acquired. It would give you all this information. And because we were sharing this so freely, they reprogrammed the American site. And so unless you actually have a paid account, you're not able to go into it anymore.
Yeah, they had to stop you some way, didn't they?
Well, too little, too late.
That's good to know. Y'all have really done a lot to help our cause along, that's for sure. And there's so much to learn. There really is a lot to learn, especially words. What words do we use so we don't incriminate ourselves or put ourselves back into, a foreign situation?
Yeah, and this is where having access to dictionaries comes into reprogramming between your ears. The biggest bugaboo that people need to wrap their head around is in 1858, in the second session of Congress, Congress changed the definitions behind words. And you will find those new definitions in Black's dictionary, the entire Black series. So you have like Bouvier's. The Bouvier's 1856 is the last American congressionally approved American dictionary.
And what year was that?
1856.
I know Mason often talks about the 28.
Yep.
Noel Webster's dictionary, which is also American.
Well, I've been meaning to post a bunch of dictionaries online, but and I think I may have started it, but I had something drop into my lap that I'm on a time crunch on.
Well, you mean like your computer?
No,
No, not your computer troubles, huh?
well, I've gotten through part of that,
That's good.
and yeah, otherwise I wouldn't be here tonight.
Yeah, yeah.
But the corporations are waking up to the fact that they may have been doing things unlawfully, and they're at a point of liability for their actions.
Especially the ones that have been poisoning us, with all of the chemicals that they put in our food and our water and our soil, and they sell us as being good for us, and now we know they're not.
Well, a number of corporate entities that have pawned off fake health theory. They have polluted the field so badly that the field of science has lost credibility. Who do you trust? We here in Washington are looking at industrial hemp as a cleanup agent in the possibility of removing heavy toxics and, let's say, glycophosphate, Roundup, out of the soil. But if the plant takes these toxics up, what do you do with them? So we're looking at reprocessing of fiber. And I'm looking at an adiabatic high temperature furnace that will burn materials at such a high temperature, it will even render plutonium inert.
How are you going to pay for something like that?
Like I said, I'm going to look around. I got the document with the reference to count numbers and the amounts in them and who holds those bank accounts. You're going to find out almost every last tier 1 bank has been engaged in criminal absconding.
But I mean, that would fall into line as a humanitarian project, that if you could produce the project outline, that it should be funded pretty easily, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Imagine taking this hemp fiber on clean ground and making hemp cloth. Now, hemp cloth original jeans was what Levi Strauss made the original jean out of. Original sails for ships were hemp. Now, picture yourself wearing a pair of green produced, eco-friendly jeans and shirt from a crop. Depending upon where it's grown in America, you can get upwards of 2 crops a year, where you can only get 1 crop of tree for, let's say, a pine or a fir tree, once in 45 years.
Yeah, you can see why they outlawed it.
Well, Standard Oil took us down the path of monopoly and control into petroderivatives, and with that, our economy grew, our drug industry grew, rayon, nylon, polyester, every form of synthetic, even pharmaceuticals. So wouldn't it be nice to go back to having a medical garden?
Oh yeah. Yeah, that's what I was thinking, that all the chemicals and all the, I mean, they make these out of synthetic things that who knows what they are.
Well,
they're not good for our bodies, that's for sure.
Well, the pharmaceutical industry has been caught intentionally plugging medications with the counter agent. So I'm going to use a very specific medication. If you know anybody who is a celiac patient, allergic to gluten, I help sponsor a court case in Oregon in the greater Portland area. The court case was against Pfizer Pharmaceutical. The pill was built with gluten binding derivatives.
Oh my gosh.
Now, think of being allergic to gluten as if your immune system is the 4-year-old sitting in the back seat of the station wagon. And you have that nasty, mean kid brother who's 2.5 who just loves picking on his brother. Poke, 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 poke. Keep that up. I'm going to tell mom. It's an irritation to your immune system. We won the court case. However, by that time, Pfizer Pharmaceutical filed a Form 25 and delisted themselves off the stock market and started bankrupting all of their little micro divisions. You can't collect from a bankrupt entity.
But they're still in business.
Which division and where is it from?
Oh, okay. They have a way to get around things, don't they?
Yep. Well, the corporations that have sold us DDT and thimerosal.
That DDT was so awful. I mean, they sprayed that all over people saying that it was good for them.
Yep. Well,
it killed all the eagles just about, you know.
Well,
welcome
yeah,
to
it
the
killed
3D
license.
world. Welcome to the 3D world.
Yeah. That's why we're done with evil. Not putting up with it. And if you voluntarily vote with your wallet and learn who's who polluting the zoo and take your dollar elsewhere, support your neighbor, the little country farmer who bravely puts up a stand on the edge of the road. The farmer is engaging in trade if he reclaims himself. You have an unrestricted, internationally recognized right to trade, and it's a violation of free trade under 15 USC. But are you eligible?
So you're saying that a farmer can sell his crops and not be considered a commercial entity?
Yep.
Well, that sure makes
Part of
a
that
difference.
Go ahead.
I was saying that sure makes a difference in like the Amish that were taken down last year, and that's why so many of them voted this year. They closed them down.
Well, learning to have standing to control your employees and be willing to go to the mat with them. If you have to, take everything they possess, kick their butt so hard and throw them out of their houses. Take their car, take their bank account, strip them of everything. Now, I tried to warn you, but your boneheadedness, we didn't have to go here. Now, will you listen? And unfortunately, I see us having to do that to some of our neighbors.
Well, the government certainly did that to the Amish last year. It was awful.
Mm-hmm.
They took all of their food that they had produced for the year. They were selling some of it, and some of it was stored for themselves. They took everything, threw it away, just tossed it in the trash, dumpster or something.
So
not right.
Well, not only is it not right, but one needs to recognize the mechanism. At one time, I posted the Naval Agency Distribution Act of 1864. It's a piece of legislation out of Great Britain. At the bottom of that piece of legislation, this is where the Secretary of State comes on shore as a foreign officer for that foreign corporation known as United States. And your local Secretary of State is a flunky under him. And they're all British agents. All of our American offices were usurped when our American state governmental structure was taken down around 1860.
Oh, that's when the corporations came in, right?
Mm-hmm. Anyway, I'll dig around and get that national UBI number for all the states, and I'll post it for everyone. So getting back to our Constitution, there were 3 of these business contracts originally spelled out. The American people do not have any covering as a constitutional right under any of them. In the American Constitution, we have guarantees. Now think of the contractor. The British government comes on shore to provide services to the American people. Now that sailor coming on shore has to learn the rules of the law of the land to which he's stepping onto. There's a relationship here. Now, our American government, by way of the American state citizen, are the creators and the authority that created the Constitution from the American side of the coin. And the tricky little word that's in it is for. You have for and of, and the capital T and the little t, all used in semantic deceit. If the public school system gets you to a point where you're not mentally aware enough to recognize what you read, you become the sucker. And in the Roman culture, if a man or woman can be deceived, let them be deceived. You'll know it as caveat emptor. As a business contractor, let the buyer beware. And there's a sucker born every minute. So we have to wise up. We need to step into the role of a lifelong, continuous learner so that we can pass it on to our adult children and our grandchildren. And that's one of the driving forces behind every last one of you on this call tonight. Since you were deceived, what are you willing to do about it? I yield.
I have a question. Yeah, I've heard, and I believe this to be true, that all of our tax money went to UK and to the Vatican. And if that's the case, my daughter was asking me today, well, how do we pay for our roads? How do we pay for our education? How do we pay for this? And how do we pay for that if all of our taxes went somewhere else? I don't know.
Okay. So you need to recognize that you had 2 service contractors and they were double dipping on you. You have your county weed board in both of the contractors. Now, if they bill you for $10 for roadside weed control and they spend $1.86 in the territorial, and let's say they spend $2.20 in the municipal, what do they do with the rest of the $10? They slush fund it, and it's hidden in the combined annual financial report, commonly referred to as CAFR accounts. There is no shortage of funding available. Period. We've all been artificially indoctrinated into the mindset of scarcity. Well, I'm going to challenge you. Get over yourself. Go look in the mirror and tell yourself you are an extension of the divine. You are a wealth creator, and you're full of abundance, not scarcity. And pick that up as an affirmation. Those of you that do that are going to walk into a beautiful world down the road.
I remember I talked to Mason a couple weeks ago, or maybe it was a week ago. I lose track of time. I don't keep track of time. Let's put it that way. Anyway, he said to always start with like I am, and then something wonderful, and I can, and something great, and everything you say has consequences, and so always say something very positive about yourself. And
Okay,
so that's very similar to what you just said.
Then I'm going to give you a little secret. Since this entire system is built on admissions and confessions, go back into your Bible where it said that Adam was given a task by God. And what was he chosen to do? Go out and name the beasts of the field. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
So which side of that Adamic bequeathment are you?
I don't know. What do you mean by which side? Whether I would do that or not?
No, when I say which side of that bequeathment.
Oh, am I? Okay, what am I then?
No.
Okay, not that either? Okay, well, explain.
I am that I am, said God.
Yes, he
versus
did.
my name is. Right there, you just set yourself on one side of the equation or the other. Are you a beast of the field, or are you on the side of the Adamic family? Literally. Now, take the word name and write it vertically. N-A-M-E. Now I want you to read that phonically. N-A-M-E. Enemy.
Oh.
That's what a nom de guerre is, a name at war. And every last one of you have been involved in a war of the mind and the soul. And it's a war that you don't recognize, you don't feel, but nonetheless, you have been at war. And a couple of times when I have given this talk, I ask all the gentlemen to stand up, reach in their back pocket, take their driver's license out, and put it into their left hand and study it. and then say hello to your little friend, your alter ego. And then I explain capitis, diminutia, medius, minimus, and maximus. These are the three rules of Roman name construction. The all caps version of a name is a corporate fictitious entity that would be recognized as a franchise. And why is your picture on it? Because you are the authorized representative of the franchise. Well, Bob Smith is on the driver's license. Well, what does Bob Smith look like? Well, this Bob Smith has blonde hair and blue eyes. Well, this other Bob Smith over here is brunette with brown eyes. That's why the picture's on there. So when I tell the men to hold their driver's license in their left hand, I say, okay, if you think of yourself as a U.S. citizen, raise your left hand high in the air. Now, ask yourself, are you an American? And if so, proudly raise your right hand into the air. And as soon as all the arms are in the air, I said, freeze. I want you all to look at yourself. The only other population that does this, both hands in the air, are prisoners of war. And yes, you have been a prisoner in this war all this time. So what are you going to do to free yourself? And then I invite everybody to sit down. We have had to endure millennia of this, folks. Millennia. This is a typical Roman Empire application of its conquered territory. Are you conquered?
Conquered and captured, I guess.
Okay, so getting access to the keys to your jail cell are readily available. But are you willing to reach outside your cell, pick them up off the floor, and use them? Folks like Mason have gone down their respective rabbit hole for their interests. And they've joined forces in sharing their information. And the actual American government is rebuilding itself and lodging objections to the international communities. Now, I want to make everyone well aware of two things that recently came to my awareness. I have known for quite some time that there is an ancient settlement in the bottom of the Grand Canyon. And it's a very ancient, well-established settlement. And there are oodles of gold trinket artifacts scattered about that you might think of looking at as a Dixie cup. And there are powers that want that gold. there are forces south of the Mexican border that are part of the drug cartels. And there are certain factions of the deep state military that want it as well. By LiDAR scanning, another gold deposit was found in the edge of Michigan. And it's believed to be purloined European gold that was taken out of the Bank of England and stashed here. Are you going to allow your country to be invaded and pillaged?
And I understand there's armed guards outside of the caves or wherever they have that stored and the Grand Canyons. Is that right?
Yes. So if you look at the map of the Grand Canyon, there is a military cordoned off area.
Okay.
All across the country, there are scattered ancient settlements. A lot of them predate Christopher Columbus and that shtick. The Vikings were here long time ago. And in the Midwest, someplace, there was a Welsh societal settlement that left traces of a language called Ogham. Ogham died out in Europe around 700 to 750 AD. Scattered across America, there are mounds and other monolithic kind of structures. We just have to have our eyes open to recognize antiquity. And it's now recognized that the main controlling agent for lack of disclosure has been the Smithsonian.
Mm. Mm.
I became aware of the field of rogue archaeology after a lady was on a dig in the Yucatan Peninsula of Mexico. They were excavating a cave, and she came across one of these old sandstone mortars where they would take the corn and the grain and grind it into meal. And they had taken the top layers of dirt and then discovered this. And she was shocked to find the grain still on this mortar. She scooped up the sample, ran to her field supervisor and said, "Look what I found. I want to send it in to have it analyzed." "Go ahead," said the supervisor. And she sent it in for radiocarbon dating, and it came back with something like 25,000 years, which predates the Clovis people theory. And the field supervisor poo-potted off as the laboratory analysis error. Send it back for the other dating. And when she got it back, it was within about 900 years of each other. And she sent the sample and the report back to the Smithsonian without passing it through her field supervisor. The Smithsonian then got contact with the field supervisor and said, "Hey, you have someone on your crew. We're making you aware that she bypassed you and sent us these two reports." The field supervisor went to this lady and asked her, "Did you do this?" And she said, "Yes, because I didn't trust you." Well, the field supervisor informed her, "Your career is over. You will never work in the field of archaeology excavation ever again." So recognizing the institutions around us who have contrived to withhold so much from us.
That's all they do.
Yeah, hide it.
That's right.
Yep.
Yeah. Unbelievable. We've been so, gosh,
Well,
blind.
and some of the fed out translated materials have not been accurate. So as the field of time grew on and more that I became aware of these forbidden rogue archaeologists that have been banned from the field, I became aware of a group of them that said, "Hey, let's all get together and have a meeting. Let's go do our own self-financed spelunking. And maybe we'll garner a little bit of outside funding to help, get us there." So they picked up one of these things called myth and legends. And they started discussing the merit of how did this myth come to be? Well, how did that legend come to be? And they whittled it down, and they had 3 primary ones, and they drew straws and picked this one. And they made a trip to Asia. And they started talking to the local guides. "What do you know about this legendary city?" "I heard about the legend, but don't know anything of it." And they move on. They finally get into an area where it becomes more detailed. "Yeah, I know about it. And, people do this and people do that." And they finally found a guide who just elaborated everything. "Well, we would like to hire you." "To do what?" "To take us there." "Why?" "Well, people that go there don't come back." "Why?" "I don't know. I've never been there. I've been close to it, but I myself won't go there." Well, they struck a deal with this particular guide. "If we hire you, will you take us as close as you're comfortable? You get to set wherever that is. And then we will go on from there with your guidance." The guide thought for a little while, and he said, "Yeah, I'll do that." So they gathered up their supplies and headed off into the bush. One day, the guide said, "This is as close as I'm willing to go." So they set up base camp. And before the setting sun, "Can you tell us, which way to go?" "Well, you see that mountain, you see that dip and that rise right there. You go between it, you go over it into the next valley, and over the edge of the next mountain, you'll drop into a valley and you'll find the city there." "Well, how long will it take?" "Well, roughly 3 days hike to get there."
Wow.
"Okay, will you be willing to stay here for the fortnight, which is 2 weeks? We promise we'll be back in a fortnight." The guide said, "Yeah, I'll stay here, but I don't expect you guys to return." Well, they got into the city, found it. It's hugely overgrown with teak and big giant trees and everything. And they noticed an odd, peculiar look to the rock that is constructed in the city. And they finally enter one of the buildings, and they notice the stark contrast between the inside and the outside. And they were going back and forth, going, The rock on the outside of all these buildings have been extremely heat scorched. So as they're walking around, they found one of these little corner piece rocks kind of wedged out. And so this guy said, hey, help me. I want to pull this rock out because I want everything that's in this crevice. And so they managed to get the rock out. They scooped everything that they could get out of there into a bag. They put the rock back. And then they basically took GPS settings of where the buildings were set up, and then they got their butt out of there. Well, when they got back to the States, they sent that sample back off to a lab to analyze it. And the guy was walking from one piece of equipment to another, and he happened to have a turned on live Geiger counter. And when he walked past it, that Geiger counter suddenly started screaming. And this guy goes, oh my God. And he waves the sample past it, and he gets really panicked, gets these guys on the phone, starts accusing them of going into like the atomic energy thing like Tennessee Valley or out there at Hanford's Reach. And they assured him, no. That was from an archaeological site in Asia. And they did a conferencing and said, hey, this is me. We all vouch for this sample. And this lab tech simmered down, and he said, well, then I'm going to reanalyze it. And what he discovered is on the radioactive nucleotide degradation scale, there's something called a half-life. Uranium busts down to its next component in its half-life. And then half of that, it busts down into the next component. Well, whether it's uranium, cesium, strontium, radium, everything has a half-life. And as he's working his way down the degradation scale, he finally hits the back wall. And he goes, impossible. And he gets these folks on the phone, and he says, gentlemen, I've got news for you. And they're all anxiously listening. I found the back wall of this isotope. And he gave the isotope chemical derivative of it. In order to get to this point in its half-life cycle, this sample is at least 35,000 years old.
Huh.
That city was nuked 35,000 years ago.
Wow.
So do you think we're not being told the truth? You think?
Yeah.
So as all of you look at your individual life, you have your pet peeves that motivated you to get here. For some of you, it's the traffic ticket or the code enforcement folks that said you had to do this or do that. Some of you, it's mortgages. You've learned that your birth certificate is called the strawman. Well, this is in reference to a disclosure by the movie The Wizard of Oz. The Tin Man, the tax identification number, has no brain, no heart. And that journey is for the lion-hearted, the stalwart. And yes, the solution has been so simple. Dorothy, all you had to do was click your heels 3 times and think back to Kansas. No place like home. No place like home. No place like home. But can you see and recognize the who's who in the landscape of the controllers? The wizard behind the curtain is known as the alien property custodian. The alien property custodian is the one who is, in fact, in control of your American birthright in the birth certificate trust. And it's held in what's called a usufructuary condition. Someone else is managing your stuff behind your back. And they have a usufructuary obligation to hold you harmless for anything that they may do, but they have conned you into performing on their behalf. So I put it this way. William Shakespeare said all the world is a stage. So who's on the stage of life? Actors. And you're one of the actors. Through the public education system, you've been taught to wear many hats. Butcher, baker, candlestick maker, husband, wife, brother, sister, donor, donee, bailee, bailor, private banker. And you've been doing all these jobs for free for everyone. Unpaid. Time to take that ring out of your nose. And this ain't Animal Farm. So go through those documents that Mason's putting up. And I will be providing more in the future. Any other questions from anybody?
Yeah, I have one for Mason. Someone commented in the room that people must awaken to the spells they are casting with their words. Not just the words that they say about themselves, but the words that they speak about other things as well. Words contain vibrations and frequency that are the fundamental elements of all creation. If you say something is going to be hard, then of course it will be hard, because that is your thought and that is your words behind the thought. This is similar to what Mason, you told me, one time when we were on the phone talking about this, and I was wondering if you could comment on it. Are you there? I see you. Let's see.
Mason, you're muted.
Yeah, you need to unmute yourself, Mason. There.
That was for me? I didn't know.
Yeah, that was a question for you. I read that and asked you to comment on it.
We got a bad connection. You're all breaking up like I was once.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm
Mm,
breaking up.
yeah, but I
Anyway,
kind of got
it's
the idea.
yeah, it's the last comment. If you want to read it over, one of the last comments in the room.
Okay, I'm not looking at written. I'm listening. I'm an audio guy.
Oh,
um,
okay.
um, I'm assuming what you're asking is the power of words is very important.
Yeah, that's what I'm
And
asking.
yeah, and there's two principles in life. You have what you say, and you are what you eat. And those are immutable principles. You can't get around them because they involve everything you do in life. So if your intent is to harm someone, to try and convince them to do something that you think they should be doing, then you're doing it for the wrong reason. Uh, our job here is not to enforce any of our will on another person. It's to be an example. And in being the example, it's our job and our function and our duty as a member of one of the highest classes on the planet to help other souls who have taken up positions of, we'll call it authority in their eyes, to learn and understand the law that governs all of us. Because as it's pretty common knowledge for most of the patriot community is if you're not one of the sovereignty, then you must be an alien. And depending upon what you think, what you say, how you feel, how you act, and the things you do to other people are the evidence of that. And so just because you may be the son's king, that doesn't mean you're a morally sound person. Uh, so there's a lot more to this than just how you do things. It's the example that you produce for other people to follow and see and understand why there are things you do and things you don't do in this system. And right now, we are in, and I've said this before, we're in that a very marvelous time in existence because we're actually being given the opportunity to not only face the things in our lives that we're the most fearful of, which is addressing the policing agencies and the taxing authorities and the court system. And you're not going to understand what I'm telling you until you're ready to take a step towards that very thing. And once you take the step, you need to learn how to address those individuals with the things that they have agreed in their life that they don't understand. And if they do, it's up to you to explain to them why they're not doing the things that their oath requires. So this is not some mystery process. It isn't about 1,000 years of criminal, demonic bull, because that's what's out there. And you can spend your whole life looking at that, dealing with it. I don't care that if that's the road you're down, you're not only in the 3D world, but that's where you're going to stay. And you're not going to move out of this frequency as long as those are the things that you think you're going to get by with, because there's no way around your karma. And the things you do in life, I don't care what they are, you're going to get the good, the bad, or you're going to have a neutral zone there. And the neutral place is where you want to be. So when it comes to educating the system, you can't educate the people. You have to educate the people who are in the positions where their job and their function was to do the right thing with the power they were vested with as the executive, judicial, or the other branch of government. And so this it seems to be scary on its face, but it's not. It's only as scary as your unwillingness to step towards it. So if you're worried about a driver's license, okay, I made my own ID. And I did a recording at the county, and I sent a copy off to the governor and the attorney general and the sheriff and everything. And you know how many tickets I got in the whole time of my, say, 60 years of craziness? I got one ticket, and it was because I decided it was time to get it so I could take my issues through the court system. I couldn't get a ticket. And I didn't have a driver's license either. No,
If
the
you're
plate
talking
on my
about the
car, the plate on my car was upside down.
Yeah, that's what
It
I was
was
going to say.
with no tag on it. No, it was expired, and I took my driver's license. I cut the picture off of it, and I mailed the license back to the Department of Motor Vehicles. I said, I'm not using your junk, and I didn't. And for the longest time, and I went through the courts, did all this stuff, but the court system was not ready for what I had to bring them. And I've got every court case there is on the books about your right to travel. But the court system is not interested in your rights. They're only interested in their money and their control. And so until this Trump syndrome, if you want to call it that, and this moving from the iron to the golden age and the frequency, we're in the middle strokes of this whole thing right now. And for those that are, we'll say, standing on the sideline waiting to see the outcome, they're not going anywhere. They're going right back around the wheel where they came. It's only those ones that are ready to step out in the midst of all this, look in the mirror, decide which one of these experiences in their life they really don't want to do the most, and step right into it. And don't be, okay, so be afraid, but step. You're not going to know what's going to happen until you do. And I had, like I told you, just today, I just had an issue with a very close friend who got a really horrible letter from the IRS. And I'm like, and he's like, oh my God, they're going to take everything. And I said, really? And who sent you this letter? Well, it's from the IRS. I said, are you sure? I said, did you sign for it? No. I said, does it have a name on it? No. Well, what does it have? A phone number? That's it? Okay. So I said, all right, look, he wanted me to come over tomorrow to sit with him while he makes this call because this thing was pretty threatening. And so I said, okay, fine. So I got everything ready. I got up early this morning, did all the stuff I needed to do. And all of a sudden he calls. He says, well, guess what? I said, oh, what? He said, well, I called the U.S. Treasury Department and I called the Fraud Division. And I got a hold of him and he told me the guy's name. He said, I got his personal number. And we talked for about a half an hour. And I explained to him everything that was going on. And he's saying, that didn't come from us. He said, that didn't come from the IRS. We don't do things like that. And all of a sudden, he's got a whole different demeanor because he decided to do something and face this thing instead of just hoping somebody else would take care of it for him. And all of a sudden, he's looking not only at these criminal charges that whoever this person was that did this, but he's also got the opportunity now to get closer to the sheriff. And just the funniest part is he got one of these letters from somebody in the Treasury Department. Again, it says, we have $150 million as your, it wasn't a legacy. It's like he had a, what do you get when you got a trust? Not even a trust. It's when your parents die and they leave you a whole bunch of money.
Inheritance?
Okay? Inheritance, that's what they called it. And he's like, he got this letter and it said, oh, I got $150 million inheritance. And all I got to do is call this number. And I'm looking at this thing, I'm going, I don't know if it's a good idea. And he said, why not, man? We're going to be rich. And I said, we're already rich. Don't go there. He said, yeah, but. And I said, okay, I'll tell you what. Why don't you get in your car and drive over to the sheriff's department and let him see the letter? So he did. And the sheriff, he's looking at this letter and he says, $150 million. Boy, he says, if this was a real letter, he said, I'd be your best friend. And he said, don't even go there. He said, there's scams out there all over the place. But you know how many people are afraid to pick up the phone and call the Treasury Department or call the IRS or call their local sheriff or show them, hey, look, I'm going to put this fictitious plate on my car because I have all these case law that says I have a right to travel. And I also got statutes I got them on the books. They're posted in this stuff in the website here. That's already example for exactly how the state is supposed to handle private traveling. It's already in the books. The ID that we talk about, there's an example in here of what one guy did, and the Nebraska Secretary of State authenticated his version of a state ID. put the state seal on it, and put his signature in there as the authority. So he got apostilled on a homemade ID with the state seal and the state flag. And there's a wording in it that is a do not detain right in it. So it's like, what's the big deal here? But you got so many people out there running around trying to make money selling people some agenda. And that's all I can tell you. There's an agenda here because the state that's their duty to issue you the proper ID and the proper plates and the proper titles on your land. These are duties. And even in California, there's a whole early history on the issuance of land patents for first-time buyers of land in California. And first it goes to the Surveyor General. Once the Surveyor General finishes it, he turns it over to the Secretary of State. The Secretary of State turns it over to the governor. They make up a patent, and the governor signs it, and they hand it to the guy that purchased the property. So this is part of our history. It isn't like it's some made-up thing somewhere down the road where somebody thought there was a new way to F somebody. So all this stuff is already existing. What you people need to understand is that if you aren't willing to step towards the thing that you're having an issue with and deal with these people on a personal level, not just for you, but for them, you're carrying an energy, and I've explained this before, that's unique. But it's only unique to those who understand what it is and how it works. Everybody else, they're just kind of walking around in a fog and don't know, and they're not ready. It's just the difference between a 2-year-old and a 25-year-old elector, which is still too young as far as I'm concerned. But the point is that this is a personal experience for each of us individually. And if you're going to rely on somebody else to do all your work for you, you're still on the wheel. So if you got an idea about what I'm trying to tell you, that's the whole gist of it. Quit worrying about all these stupid ancient history rules, codes, regulations, and all the other crap that's been posted out there by who knows who and who cares. The fact is you're now sitting in the most powerful position of your life in this particular place, and this is the example for the rest of the world. So you might want to consider what you're thinking, what you're saying, who you're dealing with, and what you need to do in your daily life to face yourself and get on with the program, because there's no end to it. Unless you decide to get started now, you're just going to have to do it all over again. And I don't think there's anybody in the right mind would think that that's a good idea. But if you don't follow the process, if you don't understand what I'm giving you, then you're still on the wheel, and that's just the way it is. So if there's no more questions, I've got some other business to take care of tonight. I'll
Can you
give
talk?
you a couple of minutes to think of something.
Yeah, Low Tide has a question, and so do I. So go ahead, Low Tide.
I'm just hoping that you got an update on these Supreme Court cases that were supposed to be or expected to be released today. Do you have any
If I've
updates?
got an update for you, it'll be when somebody steps out from behind a window and says, "Oh, here's Trump. Oh, goody, goody, goody. Okay, but so what? This is what I'm telling you. It ain't got nothing to do with Trump, guys. He
Well,
can't do for you.
no.
Wait a minute. He cannot do for you what you can do for yourself.
I thought I was referring to the individual case that you had filed about the electors.
The one behind the
Yes,
Brunson case.
yes,
It's
yeah.
it's going to get heard when the system decides to blow the lid off of this thing, because that's
Okay.
what's going to happen. If
I thought,
you think people are upset now, you wait till the system finally tells everybody what they really are in the system and
uh-huh.
what they've agreed to fund with their so-called tax dollars.
Yeah.
See, there's complicity in everybody's activities as long as the Federal Reserve is existing. Because
Okay.
everything you've been doing in your life that has anything to do with a tax or a license fee or anything else is being used for things that most people are going to absolutely throw up when they see it.
Okay. Well, I
So
just thought the
I'm
one
not
case
trying
couldn't
to.
be heard without the other.
No, but don't worry about that. You worry about you. See, that's the biggest
I am.
distraction in all of this is all the crap going on in the media and all this news articles and everything. And everyone's, oh, what happened here? What happened here? Who gives a shit? Why don't you start looking and see what you can do as the example to take part in what's going on in the whole world system instead of worrying about your neighbor?
Okay.
That's the key.
Sorry I asked.
And the scarier it may seem, the more growth you're going to get out of it.
All right.
But I'm going to tell you right now, if you're sitting around waiting for the system to do what it should have done a long time ago, although it wasn't time, you're wasting good, valuable time. And there's always another trip to get it right. I know why I came back. I had a compassion issue. Yeah, big time. And so now I'm being put in a position where, okay, buddy, you better quit trying to kick people in the teeth and break them down and stuff, and give them an idea about why they're here and what they need to do to learn how to get out from underneath all this thing the right way. And it's all about self-responsibility and walking into the fire. Yeah,
Well,
somebody told you you might get burned, but you ain't gonna know until you do.
I was simply interested in your work and and having been able to just support you and encourage you.
Okay, you're breaking up a little there, buddy.
All right.
Okay, are you done, Low Tide? I have a question for Mason. Did you say that the state is supposed to issue us our own ID, that we don't have to make it ourselves?
If you want, it's not up to me. I'm just giving you an example. What I'm trying to show you is, you just want to carry your driver's license expired around in your pocket? So what?
No,
If you
no.
know what, if you
I
know,
want to.
let me tell you this. Let me tell you this. You just want
Go
to
ahead.
walk into the local DMV office, if you just got to do something, and ask them, do you have a private identification that I can have my name spelled properly? I don't know. You never know what you might get. You never know what they might say. Or you could send one off to the Secretary of State, which is where it should come from anyway. Maybe even a copy of the Nebraska ID that's on the post. You can download it and copy it and take it with you. Say, hey, look what Nebraska's doing. I want one like this. Can you do that for me? Now, what are they going to say to you? I don't know. And you're not going to know until they say it. But if you're prepared, well, wait a minute. How come Nebraska identifies their people as state citizens and they have certain privileges, immunities, and exemptions? How come, where are you from? Minnesota, Missouri, Minnesota,
Virginia.
or whatever,
Vir-
Virginia. How
Virginia.
come you guys, how come you guys don't want to do it? And I'm not saying they won't, because, if what Jim's saying about what the states are being told to do, I have no evidence of that, but that's okay, about giving people exempt plates and fixing their status and their rights or their ID or whatever, hey, I think that's great. What that means is there's just going to be a lot of people that are going to miss the opportunity to do what I'm telling you.
Yeah, and that's why I want to do it beforehand.
Okay. If there's anybody who would be standing at the front of the line, it'd be me.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
do I care? No. I've been doing this for 40 years, 50 years. What the hell? You think I'm scared now?
No, I don't think you are at all. No.
Okay. Well, that's why I'm telling you what I was given the assignment to do in this lifetime. How long it lasts? I don't know. I could be here 1,000 years. That'd be fine too, or longer. I don't care. That's not an issue. I got plenty of stuff to do, and it'll be helping other people to learn why. Same reason. So
Oh, I hope
grow.
it doesn't take. I hope it doesn't take us 1,000 years to get
Well,
there.
you've been here a whole lot longer than that already. So
Well, I hope it doesn't take us 1,000 years. That's all I
I'm
can
not
know.
talking about it taking that long because it's going to happen within the next year, probably less.
Yeah.
And so all these little pieces that you're being, the little pearls that you're getting about your right to property, tax exemptions, licenses that you don't need for traveling, and by the way, um, there's a principle that goes along with the how you sell your products. And I don't care who you are, what you are, where you might be standing. Uh, if you're addressing the public, you don't have a right to do that. You only have a right to do it in a public capacity. Now, if you put a bucket of fruit out there on your front porch or hang it on your front fence, and somebody comes along who knows you, how would they know you? Ah, I don't know. How do people get to know each other, especially in their own little neighborhood? And somebody told them, hey, you know what? So and so's got a bucket of fruit out there, and but you can take one if you want, but you might put something in exchange. You might. He didn't say how much or what or anything else, But see, now that's a different matter. But when you put it out there and put a big sign on there, 10 cents a piece, you just you walked into the public's world. And the public has the right to control you. And that's the reason the Constitution was written in the first place. To control commerce affecting the public at large. And if you want to play that game, you're going to get burned. Because ultimately, here's the kicker. When you get all these people out there that are licensed and regulated and controlled in what they do, how they make it, where they sell it, when they start having a problem because the fees for that are so high they can't afford it, they're going to be looking around wondering, well, how come so-and-so down the street? It appears like he's got something going down there, but you don't know what it is. And one day you happen to be close by and you say, hey, man, hey, Joe, I haven't known you very long, but what are all these people that you have coming and going all the time? Because he's none of his business. And he says, well, those are close friends of mine. Really? Well, what are you doing? He says, well, I got a marijuana orchard in the backyard, and they come down and get a little pot every now and then. Really? Oh, you mean, that stuff, hemp. Oh, that's what that is. Ah, I got it. Yeah, and they help me. They do whatever. We got a little private deal going. You think the government has the right to step into that situation? Go read Article 1, Section 10, Clause 1, and you'll find out exactly what that's about. Because you can make a private contract with anybody, and the state has no jurisdiction over it, period. Just don't let it leak into the public world and advertise to the public. So this principle is sound, it's fixed, it's in the common law, and it's very simple to follow. And you know what it does? It also builds integrity, because when two people on the same block are planting the same crop, and they're in competition with each other in the neighborhood, okay? And all it takes is one guy to go have one guy's crop as compared to the other one, and somebody says, hey, where'd you get those peaches? Oh, got it from a friend of ours in the neighborhood. Well, which one did you like? Oh, I like this one. Oh, really? Okay. Well, pretty soon the guy that isn't growing them so good, maybe he's using the wrong water or not feeding them the right plant food or whatever, he's out of business until he figures out what he's doing wrong. So this not only builds integrity amongst the people in the community, it also builds the nature of how they do things. And there's always a right way as compared to not so right. And that's the other part of this. So you want to go into the 5D consciousness, whether it's an actual physical place or not, we're going to see here pretty soon. But if that's what you're looking for, I guarantee you, if you got all the 3D mindset stuff, that's where you're going to stay. So you got to wake up to what you're doing in life and change your attitude if it needs to be changed. And if you're doing things that look like they might be a little detrimental to your fellow man, you better pay attention to that, because that's going to be on you. And you're the one that's going to suffer the consequences for it. So, anything else I can help you guys with?
Yeah, anybody else have any questions? Just unmute yourself and go ahead and ask. Even if you just have a comment, that would be fine too.
Good call.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Lots of information shared tonight.
Thank you, Mason.
Betcha.
I want to thank both of you, Mason and Jim, for being here and sharing so much with us. And nobody else has anything to say? Come on. No? Okay. Well, we're going to go ahead and close out until next week then. And I do thank both you, Mason and Jim, and Salty Toast too for being here, and Low Tide, and everybody else. We certainly appreciate you being here. And this call is being recorded, so you can listen to it over on our YouTube site. And Salty has posted the channel down below somewhere, and we will get that to you. I'll make sure that it shows up, that you can find it. Okay. Well, y'all have a great week and a great Thanksgiving. And I'm not sure if we're doing next Friday or not. We'll have to discuss that. But until we see you again. Yeah, go ahead.
Go easy on the turkey, okay?
Yeah. Yeah. I just found out
today.
Yeah, right. Absolutely. I know that you have a little brood of them there at your house. And
they're our kids.
Yeah, they're your little babies. Yep.
You bet.
Well, y'all all have a wonderful Thanksgiving, and we will stay in touch and post when we will be getting together again. Okay. So until then, yep.
Right.
Go ahead. Good night.
Be safe, everybody. Catch you later.